Hello, demons, fae, and those in between. This is Dizzy, and I will be continuing A Thing with Wings by Paper Puffin. We are on chapter 6, so let's get started. Bruce stood along with most of the theater as Cass and her dance partner came onto the stage to join the rest of the cast. Bruce was so proud of her. Despite everything Cass had been through, she had grown to be such a kind, confident young lady. For her to not only get up on a stage and dance, but to also be one of the leads, was truly a testament to how hard she had worked to find a life she wanted. Next to him, Danny stood, wavered, and ended up right back in his seat. "Danny?" "I'm fine. Watch your daughter," Danny said. He waved one hand dismissively at Bruce while he rested his forehead in the other. He'd gone alarmingly pale. Reluctantly, Bruce turned back to applaud the show. The instant the curtains closed, Bruce took a knee in front of Danny's chair. "I'm fine," Danny tried to assure her again. "You look like a ghost," Bruce argued and took Danny's wrist. Danny covered a snort of laughter with his other hand. Danny's pulse fluttered weakly under Bruce's fingers. "We should get you to an urgent care." "It's fine," Danny said. Even his smile looked a little weak. "I just need a moment." Bruce doubted that a moment would help much. "I'm worried about your heart rate." "You caught that?" Danny asked, the question curious and not at all concerned. "I was studying to be a doctor at one point," Bruce pointed out dryly. "You were? Maybe I've heard of that before. I don't really know," Danny said before he shook his head a little. The movement did Danny's coloring no favors. "But okay, look, I know about my pulse issues. I'm having a bit of a bad few weeks right now, but I'll be fine. I've already seen my doctor about it. I get how it seems concerning, and yeah, I need to be taking it easy a bit, but this is pretty normal for me. I have some complications from an accident when I was a kid." Bruce frowned and searched the words for a lie. There wasn't one, even if there also wasn't much information. "At least let us offer you a ride home then," Bruce insisted. He continued quickly when it seemed Danny would protest. "It really wouldn't be an issue, and it would make me feel better knowing you got home safe." Danny's lips pressed together thinly. Bruce pulled out the big guns. "And Cass would hate it if you were hurt from coming to see her performance." "Does she have everyone wrapped around her finger?" Danny asked, his lips quirking into a little smile. "Basically since she arrived," Bruce said wryly. He stood and offered Danny both his arms, palms up. "Please stand carefully. If you go over the edge of the box, I'd have to drive to save you, or something equally dramatic." "We would make the papers for sure," Danny said. His grip was concerningly shaky as he wrapped his hands around Bruce's forearms, but he stood in a smooth motion, even if he ended up basically leaning against Bruce's chest. Danny stepped back after a second, cheeks dusted with red. "Okay, should I just wait for you at front?" "It's adorable how you think I'm letting you out of my sight," Bruce said. He rested his hand lightly on the small of Danny's back and started to guide the other out of the box. Again, you falling over the edge of the box, down the stairs, dramatically onto some absurdly pointy bit of Gotham architecture. These are all things I am not going to take the risk of happening to you. You're such a father." "I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult," Bruce said honestly, as they took the back stairs to avoid the crowd. "Oh, well, more of just a statement, but definitely not an insult," Danny insisted. They were tucked slightly close together until the stairs opened into a sitting room that was kept aside traditionally for those in the boxes. Tonight the Wayne name had kept it aside for Bruce, his family, and their close friends. Well, and Danny. Bruce mused as he made the other sit down on the sofa that was there purely for looks and not for comfort. Bruce poured a glass of recently refreshed water and brought it over to Danny. "I really will be all right," Danny said, but took the glass and a long sip. His color was a little better after some water. I've been dealing with some level of this for, almost 25 years now. Sort of hadn't realized it'd been that long. But anyways, it means I'm used to it. Bruce rested an arm on the sofa. Just because you're used to it doesn't mean that you have to bear it alone. Danny gave a little shrug. But I do, Bruce. Or a lot of it, at least. I live alone, after all. Not letting Bruce get a reply in, the door burst open as the room was swarmed with a multitude of Waynes, and might as well be Waynes. It left Bruce grateful as he watched his family pile into the room that he had been lucky enough, despite everything, not to end up alone. His fate could have so easily gone that way. Tim was the one who paused, as if just noticing Danny, before shaking his head. Right, the engineer Cass invited. Hi, I'm Tim. I intern at WE, so you might see me around there too. Well, not that you won't see the others, but I mean, you might see me more often. Nice to meet you, Tim, though I don't know how often you'll be down by engineering, Danny said. Danny had a bit of a tight grip on the glass in his hands, but Bruce supposed it was a great deal of people very suddenly. Oh, Tim is also a huge nerd, Steph said as she threw her arm over Tim's shoulders. He likes to tinker, so you might be surprised. Trust me, I'm his ex. We only dated for a few months, Tim said with a roll of his eyes. That's Stephanie, a family friend. Bruce cut in before things got far too out of hand. You know Dick, and this is Barbara, who he mentioned. Jason is my second eldest, is in the back with his boyfriend Roy. Duke is next to them, and this is Damien, my youngest. Greetings, Damien said, his tone severe, but far more curious than cutting. Bruce was proud of the growth, even if there was still more work to be done. Hello, everyone. Like Tim said, I'm Danny. Danny said, with a little smile that was mostly real, with just a little bit of polite company strain. Cass spent an afternoon in my office chatting with me. I suppose since we talked so much about the show, she invited me to see it. Sorry to invade your family time, though. I didn't know I would be doing that. That's just how this family goes, Barbara said with a soft chuckle. Trust me, I've been around them long enough to know they absorb people. Way to make us sound nefarious, Barbie, Jason grumbled. No, you guys are, Roy said casually. It's in a good way, sure, but you're still sorta nefarious, and you definitely absorb people. This isn't even everyone. Have I apologized for them already? Bruce asked, though he supposed the fond warmth in his words ruined the question some. Luckily, Danny just gave a soft laugh. Don't. The best of family and friendship all have a good helping of chaos and malarkey. Malarkey? Steph repeated. It's a good word, illiterate Ingrid, Jason defended. The room dissolved into chaos, and Bruce turned to apologize again, only to find Danny watching the group with a small but fond smile. Danny stayed at the back, trailing after the rambunctious flock of Waynes as they made their way behind the stage and to the other, hidden side of the theater. It made Danny smile, to see the family bumping shoulders, teasing and laughing with each other. His life in Gotham was something that Danny loved. He clawed it out from the proverbial grave of his death and everything that came with it, nearly failing high school, his failing health after, the trauma it left him with, and the relationship with his parents he left behind. But he'd gotten to the surface. He got his bachelor's and master's and PhD. He got a job that he traded for another and another until he rose up where he worked at an amazing company and got mostly left alone to dream up new ways to make the world better. Danny loved it. But that didn't mean Danny didn't miss the close friendships that, metaphorically and physically, Danny had moved away from to achieve what he had. Visiting Jazz and Taylor, Sam and Herbrud, or Tucker and his parents wasn't the same as living with them close. He missed what the Waynes had, with an ache so deep that he had to push it aside so that it didn't swallow him whole. Cass! Tim, calling his sister's name, shook Danny out of his rumination. He found a little out-of-the-way spot of the wall to lean against between some boxes and rolls of scenery. You were amazing, darling, Bruce said as he leaned in to kiss Cass's cheek. Bruce handed over a bouquet of ripe roses and baby's breath that he had brought out from where it had been stored in the sitting room. Cass basically buried her face in the flowers and inhaled. For real, little sis, your moves were amazing. You have to show me how you hold some of those poses so still, Dick said. As if you could stay still, Barbara teased, with a well-placed poke to Dick's side that made him squeak and move defensively behind Cass. Pretty sure she still beats you on flexibility too, dickhead, Jason said. It is okay. Love you still, Cass said in her soft tone. She pulled out one of the roses from the mass of flowers and tucked it behind Dick's ear. Dick looked momentarily torn if he should be insulted or fond, though fond quickly won out. He pressed a little kiss to the top of Cass's head. It seemed to be a signal somehow, and suddenly all of the family was talking to Cass or to each other. The fatigue was starting to pull too heavily on Danny for him to make out most of the chatter, so he simply closed his eyes and let the happy voices wash over him. Seconds or minutes later, there was a gentle pressure on his arm. Danny blinked his eyes open to a worried Cass, dark brows furrowed above the dramatic white and glitter of her stage makeup. Danny smiled, though he knew it probably looked a little drawn. Hello, Cass, Danny signed. The furrow between the brows only grew as she signed. You okay? Okay. Tired, Danny replied, before he gave in to just talking verbally. The sleep clouded his brain about signs right then. He really would have to practice. I'm just a little out of sorts, but I'm very glad I came. Thank you for inviting me. You danced absolutely wonderfully. I don't know much about ballet, but even I could tell how skilled you are. Thank you. I am glad you came. Could have not, she said. Of course I had to come. You invited me, and it's an important night for you. It should be. Danny made himself stand up away from the wall and put a bit more energy into his smile. I'm fine, really. Fatigue just gets me sometimes. Cass turned his frown away from Danny and directed it at her father. I already talked Danny into letting us give him a ride home, Bruce replied. I really would be fine, Danny couldn't help but argue. I've made it home in worse states than this. Oddly enough, Jason interjected, you really aren't helping your case. Danny couldn't do anything else but give an unrepentant little shrug to that. He probably wasn't, but it was true. Besides, he had already agreed to the ride, and not that he felt he had much choice. It was too easy to be swept along by the Waynes. Maybe Barbara was right. They did absorb people. That was chapter 6. I'm going to go ahead and continue to chapter 7. We could always look up where he lives, Tim suggested. Bruce turned slowly, so not to jostle the sleeping man on his shoulder, and gave his son a tired look. No, we can't. Sure, you can. WE has to have it on file. That would be a gross misuse of my position and an invasion of privacy, Bruce said. As in something Danny could very well sue for, as us taking him home has nothing to do with his work and why the company has his address on file. What about his driver's license? Duke suggested. He doesn't have one, or at least not on him, Dick said. He had Danny's jacket pulled open and was carefully feeling inside for pockets. Next to him, Jason was going through the card pocket on the back of Danny's cell phone case. He does have a reward card for Lacey's, though, so good taste there. Bruce rubbed at his face. Dick, stop looking for a wallet. Jason, put the cards back where you found them, please. And no hacking the phone. You're no fun anymore, Jason said with a mocking whine. Stephanie stifled a snicker. Stephanie, stop talking him on social media, and Barbara, stop using what she's found to try and triangulate where he's from, Bruce said. Jason's right, Stephanie said, and slumped dramatically into the seat. You're no fun anymore. Yes, how boring of me, Bruce drawled, not invading the privacy of a man so unwell that he fell asleep in a noisy limo full of near strangers. Cass leaned forward towards Danny at that. Bruce quickly shifted gears to try and reassure her. He'll be all right, Cass. Breathing is shallow. Heart? Bruce nodded. He said there was an accident when he was a child that affected his heart and pulse. It was quite slow and weak earlier. He stood up from his seat and had to sit immediately back down, but he said it wasn't unexpected for him, and that he's been to his doctor recently. He did take this week off. Tim. What? Tim said defensively. He befriended my sister. I had to check him out. At least that was a reasonable excuse, in case Danny was hearing any of this. If he's doing badly, he shouldn't be home alone, right? Stephanie asked, far too innocently. Not that we even know where he lives without waking him. Shouldn't we let him rest? Tim added, with his best puppy dog eyes. I shall start to the manor then, Alfred said, bringing an abrupt end to the discussion. Well, that was that. For what felt like the millionth time that night, Bruce sighed heavily. It said something about the family, that they were both efficient and graceful at getting an unconscious body out of the car. Bruce, with Dick's help, passed Danny to Jason, who held him out of the way as the rest of the family piled out. Bruce was surprised to have Danny passed back to him the moment Jason was able to, but Bruce was quickly distracted. Right? Jason asked. What? Steph asked, popping up at Bruce's elbow. The guy is too light, Jason answered. It's like he's got bird bones. Tim stifled a snicker. Bruce, once again, sighed. Tim, take Steph and go help Alfred make sure the room gets ready. Bruce instructed. Dick, help wrangle. Cass, darling, go rest. Jason, manage the doors for me, please. There was a chorus of agreement, and the children were off. Bruce and Jason followed more sedately to be gentle with Bruce's sleeping cargo. Jokes aside, he really is too light, Jason said, keeping his quiet words between them. This might be more than just a weak pulse. What Jason didn't say, that they knew it was more than just a weak pulse. Or at least it had been on a particular night. It was concerning to think what lingering effects the transformation might have been on Danny. Especially concerning because Cass is already attached, Jason said, after finishing Bruce's own thoughts. I know. And now the others are curious. Well, more curious. I don't suppose I could pay you to keep them in line? Jason snorted. Even you couldn't afford that, old man. I was afraid not, Bruce said, and fought back a smile. Despite Jason's refusal, Bruce knew that his son would keep his eyes on the others. Jason wouldn't likely stop them, but he would keep an eye on them. Danny was still enough of an unknown that Bruce couldn't help but be wary of the man's presence in the middle of the family. At least the guest wing was the other side of the manor from the family wing. The space eased the anxiety a little. Alfred had just finished shooing Stephanie and Tim from the guest room as they approached with Danny. Jason peeled off to take his leave with the other kids, and Bruce entered the room with Danny on his own. Apparently, it was going to stay that way. I trust you to see our guest settled, Alfred said, and closed the door. Bruce resisted the urge to sigh once again. At least Alfred had already folded down the sheets. Bruce laid Danny down and started with the dress shoes, mostly to delay having to decide just how much clothing was appropriate to strip at a near stranger of. After all, Danny didn't know that he had slept curled up with the whole family once before. Bruce was also aware that he had less propriety than most people, given his unusual nightlife. By the time the shoes were off and set aside, Bruce decided that the bare minimum would likely be most comfortable for Danny in the morning. The tie and belt went onto the seat of the nearby armchair, while the suit jacket was draped over the back. Danny's phone was settled on the nightstand. Alfred, of course, already had clothing set out for Danny to change into in the morning, should he wish to. Bruce left it at that, covered Danny lightly with the sheets, and took his leave. Danny woke relaxed. From the top of his head to the tips of his toes, he was relaxed, which was the first sign something was off. Relaxed was then followed swiftly by confused and wary. He stayed carefully still and silent as he took in the space around him. The room was darker than his, and heavier somehow with that darkness. It was quieter, too. There was no noise of the city seeping through the annoyingly thin but wonderfully large windows that looked out over the streets of Gotham. He was in a bed this time, and a very comfortable one at that. He forcefully pushed back a part of his mind that was still a scared boy, worried about being captured and vivisected or cloned again, or something else horrible. Slowly, Danny opened his eyes. The bed was more than comfortable. It was impressively ornate wood that almost faded into the dark blue walls. Somehow, even the walls felt expensive. Danny figured it must be the wood detailing that ran around the room. As he pushed himself up, everything clicked into place. The ballet, Bruce insisting on giving Danny a ride home, then not remembering the end of the ride. He must be at Wayne Manor. He must have fallen asleep in the limo, which was beyond mortifying. The Waynes had just been doing him a favor out of some sense of charity or pity, and he'd ended up being a burden. Danny collapsed back into the bed and covered his face with a groan. This wasn't even some one-night stand where he could slip out quietly or something. He had to see them. He had to say thank you and sorry, and please don't fire me for being weird. Gods, why couldn't he just be normal for one night? Even without wings or turning into a giant eldritch bird, he was a mess. Danny pushed back the slightly hysterical giggle he was feeling. Well, he might as well get up and face the music so that he could call a ride to leave. If only getting up wasn't such a problem. Now that he was moving, Danny felt the ache of the missed doses of medication in every thread of his muscle. He didn't even have anything to take, not having one of his usual bags with him. Slowly, Danny got his feet under him and got himself standing. He breathed through the shaky muscles. The change of clothing was a welcome sight. The suit, that he was totally going to have to get dry cleaned now, felt more than a little stale after sleeping in it. The provided leisure wear, which was much more comfortable, and somehow, as he pulled on the oversized hoodie, familiar feeling. Stepping out into the quiet hallway, Danny wondered if he could just make a break for it, pain and all. Good to see you awake, sir. Danny jolted so hard at the sudden voice, he might have pulled something. The stately, elderly man that approached looked less than sympathetic. My apologies, sir. If you will hand me your suit, I will have it dry cleaned and sent to your office. Oh, no, that's fine. I've been enough trouble already. I insist. Meekly, Danny handed over the suit after he had fumbled out his phone and watch from the pile. The other man took it with far more grace. If you will follow me, sir, I will direct you to breakfast on the way. Right. Thank you, Mr. Pennyworth, sir, Mr. Pennyworth said, and started off. Danny scampered after him and tried not to hobble too much, even though he could feel his left knee threatening to buckle with every step. It was just a twinge. He would get home after breakfast, apparently, and take his medication, and he'd be fine. He'd be slowly turning into something eldritch and unknowable, but he'd be fine. When Danny got to sit at the table, it was already rather full, though not everyone seemed that awake. They're not morning people, Duke explained with a sunny smile when he spotted Danny. Bruce said articulately. Danny smiled despite his current embarrassment. I can see that. I don't think I can talk considering last night. I am so sorry that I fell asleep in the car. I swear I don't normally just crash like that. You should have just woken me up so that I wouldn't be... Danny, Bruce interrupted, his voice a low, sleepy rumble. Danny felt himself blush. It's no burden on us. You obviously needed the rest since you didn't even wake once. I just hope we didn't make you uncomfortable by bringing you here. Best sleep I've had in a while, Danny admitted, but I really don't want to be any more trouble to... This time, it was Cass cutting Danny off as she swept into the room and pressed a quick kiss to Danny's cheek, then Bruce's, and a few of her siblings as she made her way to a seat. Sit. Eat. Cass signed and motioned to the seat next to Bruce. Danny felt it best to give in and do as he was told. This family was very confusing. This concludes Chapter 7 of A Thing with Wings by Paper Puffin. I absolutely love this. Again, I love this fic so much. Something that, as I was reading this, I felt on a visceral level is when Danny mentioned that thing about his knee. Recently, my knee has also been, like, absolutely killing me, so I know what it's like to stand up and be like, oh, nope. Okay, we're still standing. Okay, sweet. So it's really cool to see all that, and as someone who is pretty consistently at least a little bit sore, I really like seeing, I don't like seeing Danny in pain, but seeing him in pain is cathartic in a way. I don't think that's the right word, but either way, I really enjoyed these 2 chapters, and I'm really excited to post the next one soon. So that being said, please share your thoughts on this golden piece, and don't forget to reach out to the original author, linked in the description, to express your thanks. And of course, thank you for listening to This Dragon's Hoard.